I read this evening, the state of the Ummah, this much needed and thought-provoking discussion will be presented to you by our esteemed speakers. As always, we would like to begin with the recitation of the Quran.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون واعتصموا بحبل الله جميعا ولا تفرقوا واذكروا نعمة الله عليكم إذ كنتم أعداء فألف بين قلوبكم فأصبحتم بنعمته إخوانا وكنتم على شفا حفرة من النار فأنقذكم منها كذلك يبين الله لكم آياته لعلكم تهتدون. So just as a translation, this is ayah 102 from Surah Al-Imran. Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu, O you who believe, I'm sure we all know that. Ittaqullah, fear Allah, be conscious of Allah, be mindful of Allah, be wary of Allah, keep Allah in your regard. Haqqa tuqatih, as He should be feared, as Allah deserves to be made aware of. وَلَا تَمُوتُنَّ إِلَّا وَأَنْتُمْ مُسْلِمُونَ, and do not die except in a state of Islam. You can't decide when you're going to die or how you're going to die, but you can decide your state of Islam. So it was only necessary we start with this because alhamdulillah we are very privileged to have with us Imam Asim, Dr. Rida and Diri Hussein, who I believe is on his way. But essentially if we don't look to the words of Allah for guidance, then you can go to anyone, and if you've neglected the primary source of guidance, then people are not really going to benefit you. And guidance is provided by people only as much as they take from the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So Allah starts off with the command, ittaqullah, fear Allah or be wary of Allah, be conscious of Allah. Haqqa tuqatihi wa la tamutunna illa wa antum muslimun. So it's an individual command to each and every one of us to have fear and this sort of aware and regard and consciousness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. As Allah deserves to be made aware of. So again, I'll leave this, you could read the ayah at your own leisure and ponder over it. I'm sure you'll come to some striking conclusions. The second ayah after it, wa'tasimu, the translation says, and hold firmly to the rope of Allah altogether, and do not become divided. So the second command, that is actually a call to unity. So the unity has to be based on the taqwa of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Unity based on culture, unity based on shared practices, unity based on anything other than taqwa is not necessarily Islamic per se, if this makes sense. So the unity has to be based on taqwa. So the second ayah Allah says, and hold firmly to the rope of Allah altogether, and do not become divided. And remember, wadhkuru, remember, mention, remember, the favour of Allah upon you when you were enemies and He brought your hearts together, and you became by His favour, بِنِعْمَتِهِ إِخْوَانَ, brothers. وَكُنْتُمْ عَلَى شَفَا حُفْرَةٍ مِّنَ النَّارِ, and you were on the edge of a pit of fire, and He saved you from it. كَذَلِكَ يُبَيِّنُ اللَّهُ لَكُمْ آيَاتِهِ. Thus does Allah make clear to you His verses that you may be guided. Essentially, I read verse 102 and 103 of Al Imran, chapter number 3. And I urge every single one of you to go and read it, find out what Allah is telling you directly, personally, a message to you. And a final point I will make, of the many points that could be mentioned, is that Allah mentions وَاذْكُرُوا نِعْمَةَ اللَّهِ عَلَيْكُمْ. Mention the favor, remember the favor of Allah on you. إِذْ كُنْتُمْ أَعْدَاءَ. When you were enemies, you were on misguidance, you had no unifying factor, but Allah allowed you to become unified. Again, based on this. So you have a duty to be unified. You're not doing Allah a favor really, you're doing yourselves a favor. It's an obligation, it's not really a favor that you're doing to anyone other than yourselves. So without further ado, I'll hand it over to Sister Mayha.
So our first speaker is Imam Asim, and he's the Imam of the Redbridge Islamic Centre, an instructor at the Sabil Institute, and an author for Islam 21. He has studied Arabic and Quranic sciences in Cairo alongside gaining a master's from UCL. He appears regularly on Islam Channel's religious programming and is currently presenting the Dreamer Show for Imam Channel. Ustad Asim has a special interest in tafsir studies and teaches the subject in London where he lives. We would now like to invite Imam Asim to the stage.
Bismillah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, brothers and sisters. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. Wassalatu wassalamu ala ashrafil anbiya'i wal mursalin. Nabiyyina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in, amma ba'd. It's a pleasure to be here with you, brothers and sisters. First time in Manchester University. Jazakum khair for the invitation to come here and share a few words. My talk is about unity, and the brother who read the verses, Allah reward him, actually mentioned the verse that I want to speak about, which is the 103rd verse of the 3rd chapter of the Quran, known as Surah Al-Imran. Before I get to the verse, just an introduction. We are a nation or an Ummah of 2 billion people. That makes Muslims 1 in 5. Our countries around the world are in the most strategic positions. They are resource rich, they have the brightest minds. Think of Afghanistan. Afghanistan, they say, has resources from oil, natural gas, gold, lithium, uranium, copper, cobalt. In fact, they say Afghanistan is probably the most mining rich resource region in the world. Despite our numbers, despite our resources, despite our talents, the Ummah is in a state of disarray. The Ummah is suffering. And anyone who watches the news regularly and sees the constant flurry of articles and headlines from the Muslim world cannot feel except depressed, right? I think that's the word that comes into my mind a lot when I look at the news and look at the Muslim Ummah. I don't want to depress people. I don't want to speak about the situation. I want us to focus on how to make a change. How is it that we, in our personal lives, in our small circle of friends, in this university, in this life Allah gave us, how can we be causes of change? And that's where this ayah comes in. The verse 103, Allah begins with the instruction, وَاعْتَصِمُوا بِحَبْلِ اللَّهِ جَمِيعًا وَلَا تَفَرَّقُوا. Hold on all together to the rope of Allah and do not be divided. If you think about this verse, it's an instruction to do something and an instruction for you to refrain from something. Even though one is enough, Allah doubled up. What am I talking about? Translation is, be united, hold on fast to the rope of Allah, and do not be disunited, even though that is implied in the first statement. Yes? Benefit of that is to make the meaning more powerful. As if to say that people don't really appreciate what is about to be said. People don't really appreciate the power and the significance of being united. So Allah says, be united and don't you dare be disunited. And the scholars, they say that the rope of Allah, think about the image of a rope. It is something that's supposed to tie you to something else. Scholars, they speak about this rope of Allah being the rope of Islam, the rope of the Quran, the rope of the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. In essence, what the rope of Allah is the teachings of Islam. It's what the brother referred to as the unifying factor. That the way we become united is we draw close to the teachings of Islam all together. By being close to the teachings of Islam, it will result in being a united community. And when we are united, we're not just together in this world, but we are in fact attached to our Creator and Maker above the heavens. The habl of Allah is the rope that extends to Allah in the heavens. And then Allah said, وَلَا تَفَرَّقُوا, do not be disunited. As if to say that if you are the cause of disunity in your family, or amongst your friends, or amongst your community, then that is actually something sinful. If Allah forbids something, it means that if you do that thing, you are liable for punishment. You are committing a sin, an offense. So what that kind of teaches us is that being united and making sure you're not the cause of disunity because of vanity, because of fame, because of you have a power trip. If you are the cause of disunity, you are doing something which is offensive to Allah. And it could result in you being punished by Allah. May Allah protect and preserve us all. Therefore, it is a serious matter. Now, this part of the ayah is often quoted, and the rest of the verse is neglected. And that's why I want to spend some time on the rest of the verse. Allah is saying, وَاذْكُرُوا نِعْمَةَ اللَّهِ عَلَيْكُمْ إِذْ كُنْتُمْ أَعْدَاءً فَأَلَّفَ بَيْنَ قُلُوبِكُمْ فَأَصْبَحْتُمْ بِنِعْمَتِهِ إِخْوَانًا. Allah then says, and remember, as if to say, cast your minds back into history. In the time of the Prophet ﷺ, before the advent of prophecy, if you were there, what would you have seen? إِذْ كُنْتُمْ أَعْدَاءً. You were enemies to one another. You were people who had beef with one another. Ibn Kathir says that if you went to Medina, the two tribes, Aus and Khazraj, they had long-standing wars with one another. They were rivals. There was enmity. There was killing. There was revenge. And that was unending. That was your state of affairs, Allah says. فَأَلَّفَ بَيْنَ قُلُوبِكُمْ. But then Allah, He brought your hearts together. The word for bringing together is allafa. And from allafa we get the word alf. Alf means 1,000, right? So the scholars say, it's as if Allah is saying your hearts were into 1,000 different pieces. But He brought your hearts together by bringing into your life the Prophet ﷺ with his pristine teachings. فَأَلَّفَ بَيْنَ قُلُوبِكُمْ فَأَصْبَحْتُمْ بِنِعْمَةِ إِخْوَانًا. And then you became, because of Allah's blessing, ikhwan, brothers and sisters. And the word used for become is asbaha. Asbaha doesn't mean to change, it means to transform. That you became people that transformed so much so that you were unrecognizable. Once upon a time you were enemies and now you are ikhwan. Ikhwan means brothers in a cause, comrades. Now what's interesting is in Surah Al-Hujurat, Allah says, إِنَّمَا الْمُؤْمِنُونَ إِخْوَةً. No doubt about it, the believers are nothing but ikhwa, translates to brothers, but the difference between ikhwa and ikhwan. Ikhwan means brothers in cause, ikhwa means blood brothers. How comes Allah said over there you are brothers in a cause, and over here Allah said you are blood brothers? Some of the scholars said because Surah Al-Hujurat, which mentions the word ikhwa, was revealed right at the end of the mission of the Prophet ﷺ. So what happened is, in the beginning when Islam came to you, you transformed to become ikhwan, brothers in a cause. But as the teachings of Islam penetrated your hearts, you transformed further to become blood brothers. People who have the same mother. Who did that? بِنِعْمَتِهِ. That, the credit for that goes to none other than Allah. Now there's a very important lesson in there. You know, being close to one another, being brothers to one another, being sisters to one another, It is something which Allah appreciates, and Allah in fact takes credit for that relationship. As if to say that relationship that you have, that you could go anywhere in the world and you turn up to a masjid and you are looked at as a family member, that the credit goes to Allah. And the implication of that is that if you are rude, obnoxious to your brother or sister, if you are somebody who is a cause of disunity between you and your brother, then you have actually not just insulted the brother or the sister, but you have insulted a blessing of Allah. Because who gave that relationship to you in the first place? It was who? Allah. So now if you are neglecting that relationship, you are not just insulting this person, you are insulting a blessing of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then Allah becomes even more serious in the verse. The verse then says, وَكُنْتُمْ عَلَى شَفَا حُفْرَةٍ مِنَ النَّارِ, that you were on the brink of a fiery pit. Yes? Before you became unified and became brothers and sisters, let me tell you what I saw when I looked upon you. I saw a people that were on the brink of a pit full of fire, about to fall in and kill themselves. What does that have to do with brotherhood? It's to teaching us that if you are disunited, you will suffer. You will become harmed. You will have many problems. You will destroy yourselves. And anyone who knows about Seerah will have read about the Battle of Uhud. And the Battle of Uhud, the Muslims were outnumbered 3-1. But however, in the beginning they were slaughtering their enemies. Their enemies were about to retreat and run away. But then something happened. فَشِلْتُمْ وَتَنَازَعْتُمْ فِي الْأَمْرِ. Allah says, you lost your courage and you began to dispute with one another. Speaking about the archers, they disobeyed the command of the Prophet ﷺ. And that act of disobeying the Prophet ﷺ, the leader, and the disagreement that arose because of it, turned the tide against them. And on that day, 70 men lost their lives, including the uncle of the Prophet ﷺ, Hamza radiallahu ta'ala. And the Prophet, when he walked through the battlefield at the end, he couldn't hold back his tears when he saw what they had done to his uncle Hamza. Why did that happen? It happened because of disunity. It happened because of disagreement amongst yourselves. So Uhud taught the Muslims that if you are disunited, you will suffer as a consequence. Yes? So Allah ends the verse by saying, you are on the brink of a fiery pit. فَأَنْقَذَكُمْ مِنْهَا. And I rescued you from that. Now what is amazing is that people that survive a plane crash or they run out of a burning building and they survived, those survivors share a unique bond, isn't it? That they will always remember one another and there will be some meaningful connection. Because they together were about to die and then they became survivors. So Allah is saying that you have to appreciate what I did for you. I saved you from destruction by bringing Islam into your lives. So now when you look at one another as survivors. فَأَنْقَذَكُمْ مِنْهَا. And then Allah says, this is how we explain our revelations to you, so that perhaps you will become guided. This is a matter of ourselves being guided in our life, having direction, not facing problems. So this verse, subhanAllah, a beautiful verse, has many lessons inside of it. Because of time, I just want to move now to speak about something slightly different. I want to share with you one insight into this verse from another perspective. Allah began by speaking about unity and then spoke about brotherhood. What's the connection? The connection is through true, meaningful brotherhood and sisterhood will unity arise. Yes? Will unity arise. Now there's a narration I want to share with you, a story of a man whose name is Abu Idris al-Khawlani. He was living in the time of the Prophet ﷺ, but he was very young. In the 15th Hijri year, in the reign of Umar ibn Khattab, he comes to Damascus. He's a young man, no one knows who he is. However, later on, he will become the judge of Damascus himself. He comes inside the masjid and he sees a person sitting, reserved, with a group of students around him. And he says, I saw him and he had light on his face. This story is mentioned by Imam Ahmad in his Muslim. So he becomes inquisitive, like, who is this person? He goes to someone, he says, فَسَأَلْتُهُ عَنْ, asked him about who is the person. They said, don't you know who this is? This is Mu'adh ibn Jabal, the companion of the Prophet ﷺ. So he really wanted to meet him. And he said, the moment somebody told me his name, a love for Mu'adh entered my heart. So the next day I went super early to the masjid, he said, before the time of Fajr, and he saw Mu'adh sitting there. He was praying. As soon as he ended his prayer, Mu'adh, he noticed his presence and he comes up to him. Now, Abu Idris says to him, Wallahi uhibbuka lillah. He says, I swear by God, I love you for the sake of Allah. Now, Mu'adh, he grabbed him by the scruff of the neck, pulled him close. He says, Allah, are you swearing by Allah to this? Are you taking God's name? And he says, Allah, indeed I am swearing by Allah. Mu'adh let go of him. He said, Abshir. He said, congratulations. Wallahi inni sami'tu Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam yaqul. He says, congratulations, because I heard the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam say, Al-mutahabbun fillah. Those who love one another for the sake of Allah, ala manabir min nur, will one day be on pulpits made of light, sitting in the shade of the throne of Allah. On a day there will be no shade except for His shade. Subhanallah. So Abu Idris became so overwhelmed about hearing this hadith, that people who love one another purely because they see Islam in the person in front of them, that they will be raised like kings, sat on thrones made of light. That he said, do you give me permission to tell people outside about this hadith? And Mu'adh said, go ahead. He goes outside and starts telling people, do you know what the Prophet said? And then he runs into another companion, Ubadah ibn Samit, radiallahu anhu. He said, have you heard this hadith? Ubadah said, yes, and let me tell you another hadith. Hadith Qudsi, meaning this is a quote of Allah given to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He said that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that Allah said, "Wajabat mahabbati lil mutahabbin fi." I have made it wajib upon myself to love those who love one another for my sake. I have made it wajib, obligatory on myself to love those who love one another for the sake of Allah. Amazing. And what does that narration teach us? Brothers and sisters, let me break it down for you. What that teaches us is that the first thing, or the most significant thing you should see in the person next to you is not the color of their skin, it is not the outer appearances, it's not the language that they speak, it is faith. That is the most important thing. And because of Iman, it should make you have love and loyalty to that person next to you. Whether or not that person is popular, whether or not that person has humor, whether or not that person has good bats, that's beside the point. The main thing for me is this person, he believes in Allah, and automatically now I have a love for this person. Now the problem is a lot of times people, before they say salam, they think to themselves, what is the madhab of this person? I need to find out which madhab he follows before I give them salam. Now subhanAllah, how far away is that from the teaching of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam? I wanted to give a few practical pieces of advice. The first practical piece of advice I want to give you, brothers and sisters, is a very important one. And I wish, if I could talk to my younger self, I would tell myself this. Brothers and sisters, you need to be mature. And you need to see the bigger picture. What is the bigger picture? The bigger picture is that Islam is bigger than you. Islam is a cause. And by extension, to the Prophet ﷺ, we are part of that cause. We are part of that picture. So when you consider your own trivial disputes between one another, put that dispute in the grand context of the mission of the Prophet ﷺ and see how it pales into insignificance. We need to have big hearts with one another. Don't hold grudges and don't have rivalries because there is something bigger at stake. If you look at many of the big world problems of the Muslim Ummah, they boil down to rivalry between two groups. Rivalry between two groups. And sometimes it becomes so petty that you can't understand how something so colossal of a problem has arisen from something so petty. But that is the reality. Yes? I'll share with you one story. I have 5 minutes left. 8. Allahu Akbar. Generous, man. There's a hadith inside Sahih Muslim of an incident that happened between two of the greatest men, Abu Bakr and Umar. What happened is that Abu Bakr, believe it or not, he had said something mean to Umar. After he said something mean, he asked for forgiveness, and Umar said, I'm not going to forgive you. So Abu Bakr, he goes to the mosque, he finds the Prophet ﷺ, and he says to him, Ya Rasulullah, I said something mean to Umar, and then I asked him to forgive me, and he didn't forgive me. Right? Meanwhile, Umar, he regrets not having forgiven Abu Bakr. And he goes to the house of Abu Bakr, knocks on the door to ask him to forgive him for not forgiving him. And the person behind the door says, Abu Bakr, he's not here, he's gone to see the Prophet ﷺ. So Umar becomes very scared. Like, what's going to happen now? So when he comes inside the mosque, he sees Abu Bakr sitting next to the Prophet ﷺ, and he starts to dread, oh no. And he comes and he says salam to the Prophet ﷺ, and the person doesn't respond. And then he goes to the other side and gives salam, he doesn't respond. And then he sits right in front of him and he says, Ya Rasulullah, if you don't speak